Welcome to the Awaken Your Potential podcast, a series of conscious discussions and guided meditations on topics of awakening, healing, purification, ascension, and personal transformation. Please do enjoy.
But as you can see, we have it
Nice
all set up. Just as many spiritual things as we can find. We have plants are always spiritual. Sage stick.
That's as spiritual as it gets, bro.
In the bowl. And a salt lamp with special pillows.
Not this 5G. 5G.
It's okay.
Crystals, didn't get it.
That's true. But you're into crystals more now.
Yeah, which is so fascinating and interesting to me. Like, on a real note.
I still keep thinking of the idea of you wearing a Gucci satchel, those, like the with all the rich guys that the rappers wear.
Yeah.
And then you have like a bunch of crystals.
Just ready, carrying them with me. Yeah. Yeah, but crystals have been like fascinating. I was the biggest skeptic on them. Like, in a past relationship, I was just like, nah, like I don't get it. I don't see what it is. I think this might be a placebo in your head. But I never really I guess you could say that at the same time, I never really judged it. I was just like, I'm not feeling anything, and this is not so I just don't get it, right? So although I didn't get it, I didn't reject it, right? I was just like, my own direct experience, I'm not feeling anything. I was like, okay, cool.
Eating too much shawarma.
And then what?
You're eating too much shawarma. Can't feel that shit.
Yeah. I think what happened actually, this is one of my theories, is the emptier I got, the more sensitive I got, right? So the more that I was able to feel. And I think along with also learning the history of crystals, so that's one thing that helped. A friend showed me the history of crystals and how crystals are still used today, and they're used in everything, even in the technology and all that. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I guess intellectually I got sold on it. I started seeing really how long they've been part of our civilizations and what they were used for and stuff like that. So there was sort of this intellectual resting with it, because it's like, okay, cool. I can see how they've used it. People have used it in the past. This is not something that people are just using it as an excuse to be delusionally positive or whatever. And because there's a lot of that. And I just started to feel them more. Namely, my last experience, a friend of mine told me hey, I've got a crystal for you at the shop, along with fridge magnets, as a gift from me to you. So just pick them up whenever you want. I was like, okay, cool. So I get to the shop, and when I get to the shop, I pick up the gifts, and then I was like, you know what? Let me just walk around here a little bit. And so I started just walking around the store, and then I get to one corner of the store, and all I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but there's something in here that's loud. That was what my thought was, there's something loud, the vibe, the vibrancy is strong, as hippie as that sounds.
Yeah.
And so I started playing around with all the crystals in that corner. I didn't need to that much because I just looked at what each one of them does, and then I just narrowed down 2. And so I took the one that I thought it was, and then I left the corner, and I was like, that's not it, because the loudness is gone. So I brought that crystal back and took the other one. And then when I left the corner, the loudness was still there. So I knew I got the right crystal. And I got it.
Nice.
Yeah.
It found me.
It found me, yeah.
Well, actually, that was a fascinating thing I remember I first stumbled on, where like they're kind of like, they're almost like pets. Like they have like a consciousness,
right.
Where like if it's time for them to be around you, they'll just find their way.
Yeah.
And then like when they're not, it's like you'll just lose it, or
right.
Like I don't know, it'll pop out some legs and
yes.
walk out the door. But yeah, because that was interesting. Just like them, having more of like an intelligence beyond. I mean, it's the same how I learned to explore a relationship with Neo, my dog.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many like human, like intelligent emotional tendencies he has, and like the communication layers that is like so profound. Or like with cats, I find it's pretty profound.
Right.
They're even more tapped in.
Yes.
But yeah, crystals are similar in that way. They just don't have like, maybe they have a face. I don't know. Maybe you looked at it enough, like, oh, look at
there's a nose.
Look at that cute face.
Yeah.
Cute little crystal. Yeah, that's cool. I remember, I think it was Jackie was telling me how there was this guy, I think he just passed, but he was like this big like mushroom mega doser. Like he'll take like 30 grams of mushroom or something like that. Like this African shaman, and he was I guess in his experiences he was having these like real next level like interactions with crystals, as if they're like living beings. But he was saying how like kind of like this, like like we wear it around our neck like a lot of times for like decoration for some.
Sure.
For me, it's more of a like a energetic relationship, but how it would be similar to like if we were like had like a phone like on our necklace,
right? And
like we're like dangling a phone. You know what I mean? Like that's how like primitive like our knowledge or interactions are with them now, like, compared to like in the ancient times.
Right, where we had, I want to say, more access to our true power.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah. I really, think that like life is really lived in that subtlety.
Yeah. I was just thinking of, because you're thinking of the, like when you're showing the guy who like pranks his Arab dad.
Yeah,
like if you imagine you had your dad like with you and you start like talking to your crystals. And
you're like, I'm taking this guy to the
and like doing it, like doing it completely seriously.
Yeah.
Like as you, I could see that would be so good. Like you just start doing it through like you're just chilling, like watching something or like eating, and then you just do it a couple times, and he keeps like noticing, like, like what are you?
Who are you talking to?
Oh my god! So
Bless
good.
you, Crystal. Thank you.
Like an imaginary friend or something.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. Also, you can't force it. That's what I found.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, I'll tell you this. Like, knowing this about myself, sometimes like I'll find something that works, and I'm like fascinated by it, and I'll just fucking hammer it till, like, really, really try to get more out of that thing or that tool, right? Similar thing happened with fasting, right? The first fast I ever did, I intended for 3 days, ended up being 4 days because I felt so great. And then I just ate for a week, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go into another fast again, right? And then I went for a 7-day water fast. And now looking back, that like 7-day water fast was so, it felt unnecessary, and it felt too soon, in a sense, because I was reaching, I was like, oh, this is what my results were in the first 3 days and the first fast I did. Let me do that again. And you can't, that reaching doesn't really work. Where if it's like a genuine curiosity where it's okay if you don't find anything, and you know what I mean. Like in the example of the crystals, it's like going into a crystal shop and it's like you look for that thing that speaks to you or that calls you, that feels loud, and if you don't find it, you leave, and it's not a problem. Right? So there isn't that reaching. I find that reaching energy, I don't know what to call it, that thing where it's like maybe seeking, it doesn't really work. It's really got to come from like this empty curiosity.
It's true. You could relate a lot to your motivation, to the innocence motivation, because that's like that's the transference that I've experienced as well, being innocence, where like the innocence transference into desire has that kind of like focused, like goal-oriented dynamic, where I experience it with everything. Like I was just reflecting on it, writing my book. Like if I get into a natural flow where like I'm just inspired to write for a couple days, it happens. But then as soon as I start getting into like planning mode, where like, okay, I'm gonna release this book, and then I'm gonna launch this program, and then this is gonna set up like this, and then it starts like it's snowballing into this. Like the initial pieces may have been fine, but then it kind of goes overboard. So I noticed that a lot with that transference, innocence to desire. But I feel like it's an applicable thing to everybody, really, because I mean the less pushing you're doing, the less you're identifying with, like you said, seeking energy, which just pushes away the goal. You know what I mean? Like it's like running with like a stick with like a carrot. Like
right. No matter how much you run, it's still gonna be. I mean, I equated it to like running on a treadmill. Like you're running and you feel like you're going somewhere, but you're not going anywhere. You know. But here's like, it's such a weird paradox for people to wrap their head around, right? Because it's only when you've like really exhausted yourself on that treadmill that you realize that there's no use for it. You know, but you've got to exhaust that seeker. You've got to like really go all out on that treadmill, and at some point going like, fuck it, I haven't found anything or whatever. Or this is there's a thing that you say that like, this is not it, not this, not that. It's only when that happens, really, that you, I guess, come home to yourself.
It's true. Now we go into 30 minutes of silence. That's what we need on the podcast, on the audio version. Just be like you like pull up the audio like the Darth Vader yogic breathing.
Yeah. What do they call it? The
Ujjayi breath.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Just we pretty much could turn this into like a spiritual satire.
Yeah, really.
Podcast.
Yeah.
I would like to create reels or something that are more geared towards that, because there's just so many topics that are like full on hilarious. I find myself like when I'm like, it's kind of, I guess it's the paradox of that seeking energy you're talking about, where like originally when I'm going through like social media, like spiritual content, it's like trying to find the next like hit of like God or something.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays it's like it's almost like I'm constantly like in a comedy show, like
right.
not like at people. It's just like the hilariousness of some of the
Yeah,
like topics or something like this, you know?
I think it's called like the cosmic giggle or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah. Just people taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah. That or I'm like thinking of like some like spiritual program that's being sold, and then it's like a woman like half
$10,000.
naked, like
Right.
half naked. Like it's beautiful to look at. I mean, I love like the feminine essence, but it's just like some, I don't know, empowerment program, and then like it's like, why does it always have to come with some like half naked photo or some shit?
Yeah.
It's all good, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't get it either, to be honest. I think part of it is
Well, I do get
playing the game.
Yeah,
right?
well, I think there's a side to it that could be like consciously or unconsciously using that as a marketing tool, and then the other side of it is like there is a big uprising in this idea of like sexual freedom, you know, like not only in the spiritual space but in the more like woke like world.
Yes.
I guess even like feminist world.
Yes.
Which is like very much about the empowerment behind sexual freedom and like all of that, but it's kind of, I guess it's like every cycle on the path where it kind of just like goes to some other extreme, and then it like eventually comes back full circle.
Right.
You know, because I mean, because I just noticed it from my vantage point of like you know, years ago it'd be like, yeah, like following like a lot of these characters, you know, like these women, and then be like, oh, this is so like attractive, and then you're kind of like hyped by it, but then nowadays I find myself unfollowing those pages more and more, even though like either I know them or they're attractive or this or that, but I'm like less, I'd rather that not be in my consciousness, because the more I'm seeing it, the more it triggers things, or not trigger, but just it creates that unnecessary energy, you know, where I find myself more and more gravitated, at least when it comes to like the opposite sex, the female, that's like more I wouldn't call it prude, but like there's like an innocence, you know what I mean, or like I find innocence is probably the best word, because it's not really about having clothes on or not, like it's not really that, but there is something about the innocence that pulls more away from that type of you know, dynamic, which there isn't anything wrong about that, but it's just a funny trend, you know.
It is. I mean, it's a tough position to be in, I think, for women, to be honest, because in one sense it works what they're doing, right? But in another it doesn't, because in one way it works because they're getting attention, right? And for the female, that attention in general is like a form of love, right? But on the other sense, it's not working, because are they getting the attention that they want, right? That maybe the more affectionate attention, that closeness with somebody,
or making that 6-figure, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that, because I've noticed this as well. We talked about this, I think, in a previous podcast, where it was like the unwanted flirting or like messages or something like from people, you know, because it's like, I mean, I guess if you're an attractive person too, and you're putting stuff out, even just a photo of yourself is gonna spark people like messaging you or stuff like that. But the more you go down that road where it's like other things that are, you know what I mean, like there's this kind of like not sensual, but like seductive vibe behind it, then it kind of like exacerbates that,
right?
You know, initially it may be like attention, but then it turns into it's just annoying, or it's like it becomes a challenge, because now you're not really getting the true message across. It's coming across like people are wanting to converse with you because of that element of what you're sharing, but also because of the like attraction piece, or the seduct, you know.
Yes.
And I just know it from my own journey. Because like going through it where it's like you're getting attention for whatever amount of years is great. And then the more I feel mature you become, or just in true acceptance and love with yourself, the less that's necessary. So then that becomes more of like a hindrance, because you're like, well, are you really here to like have a real discussion, or is this coming with
an agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I find men don't deal with that as much.
No,
not even close. So
Yeah.
Talking to some friends in the space, coaching or this or whatever, and like telling me about all the messages, like I'm just like blown away, like how, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
guys are creeps. Straight up, like there's so many guys that are just like, there's that hidden thing, but at the same time it's like, you know what, I get it, you don't know what I mean, like there's me and stand-up comedy, there's a bit by Jerry Seinfeld. He says, like, men know what they want, and women know what men want. What do men want? Women, right? And but do we have any idea on how to get them? Nope. Our best ideas is honking at them when we're in the car and yelling at them at construction sites. So, when there is that like kind of energy, when there is that kind of energy, when you're just like captivated by somebody, and so part of your mind is going like, what could I ever do to get in there, right? And I mean, that's the start of something bad, I'll say, because it's like, it's not really gonna go well if there isn't maybe this is because of my motivation, which is the innocence vibe again, but if there isn't that innocence vibe more that just naturally unfolds, of like, okay, let me see, like, who is this person, let me get to know them, right? And not, sure, they're attractive and sure, that's a plus, but who is, I guess, who is underneath that, who is beyond that. That's really where like all the fulfillment is going to come. And I think, one thing that you've told me before, I want to say like beginning of 2020, is to realize that enlightenment is the first step, right? And now I realize that more and more, right? Because naturally, when you just know who you are, you're not that captivated by somebody,
Yeah.
The more you're captivated by that, oh wow, she's so this, or he's so that, the less that you know who you are, right? Person or thing, right? That's why, like, is like, I don't say that a monk is a person who is, who's just gonna live in the cave and not collect things. It's just a person that doesn't feel the need to like collect things and accumulate so much, because one, they know who they are, and two, they experience so much more with less.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the consuming nature, because seduction and consuming are very similar, or like vampiric almost, like they're all kind of intertwined, where like once, because I all I see it is living more of a monk lifestyle, minimalism, fasting, celibacy, or some form of that, just less is more lifestyle essentially. Then the consumptive nature is gone, or it's like diminished, and then actually like the seductive nature, the vampiric, all like those forms of ways in which there's some sort of siphoning or pulling of energy,
right,
from another, instead of like the creation of energy and the endless creation of energy. Because if we are self-perpetuating like eternal beings, then we have eternal energy to create, right? So there wouldn't ever need to be that that pulling kind of vibe, you know, which the seductive program is very, you know, it is like a fallen angelic or a distorted aspect of this planet, you know, where seduction is just it's not a natural organic process. Like it seems that way, or it can seem that way, like in traditional like personal development stuff or whatever, but when you really come to see it for what it is, it's like, no, it's not that. Because again, it comes back from that true desireless space where, or it's like you're transforming the lower desires into higher form, which are always creative, you know, in their true nature. So then there wouldn't really be much room for that seductive vibe. Like it would be just a frequency oscillation where you're gonna match with the people that are of that same, you know, soul fragment or soul match, soul, you know, like twin or these different ideas. But it's really just a frequency alignment. So there's no effort. Like it's just, oh yeah, okay, you know. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it more and more.
And there's, I mean, that's the first time I hear of it in that sense, of the pulling energy, right?
Yeah.
Because, and it makes so much sense, right? You're essentially trying to extract energy from something other than you, right?
Because it can relate a lot to money too, right? Much of that, like our primary relationship with it outside of food, well, it'd be like food, sex, and money. That's why I've always tied those together, like in video courses, or you know, because if the food element is looked at, then the sex element is going to be looked at, and the money element also going to be looked at.
Right.
Where it's all seen in the same way. Where it's not that money's bad, but it's that the predominant program is like the pulling, you know, because it's like we got to profit off each other. Like we're simply, it's like vampiring each other. Yeah. You know, because it's like, how can I profit so I can survive? But if it becomes more synergistic, where like there's true value exchange, you know, where like if you've created true value, you may have like a natural intuition, like, okay, this is worth like, you know, $111, or you know, like some some sacred number that comes to you. But it's like there's a natural alignment, like, okay, I feel good with exchanging this for this money, you know. It's not about profiting or anything, it's just about like, this is what it's worth in this dynamic of exchange that we're dealing with, you know. But it could also be, maybe there's a barter, or maybe you just feel led to gift it to somebody. You know? There's no real rule, but there's a respect of the importance of like equal value exchange, you know, and circulation of energy. And
right.
So it's same with sex, same with food, where it's not like we have to X them all. It's just like, you know, it's like, oh, we love fasting, we love eating. You know, with the sexual element, it's like you're not like running around with everyone. It's like maybe there's a true devotion to somebody, and then when you do engage, then there's like it's such a reverent exchange that it's not even like, it's not the sex you've once known. It's like a whole other, you know. So everything transforms into this higher and higher form. That's how I see it, and it's mainly coming from like releasing from the consumptive vibe, you know. And then because even the breatharian perspective, like the reflection of breatharianism, or like self-autonomous living, where a lot of these beings, you know, not eating, not sleeping, not drinking, not having sex, not working for money, like it's just true, like pure creativity, where you know truly that everything you have is actually already here, you know what I mean? And I more and more that becomes like the reality I find. That's a big element, right? That faith, that trust, that everything that you have is already here. It gives such a restfulness to life, right? Where there isn't this like, oh, I gotta get this or get that or whatever, right? And honestly, like, that's why it's the foundation, I think. That's why it's the first step. Because if that restfulness is not there, then I think there's so much like maybe unnecessary action, you know, just going left and right, you know. Like I remember once I was visiting family, and then, you know, they're not naturally restful. So, and
there's an identity, you know, this is very common in the West, right? There's an identity of I grind so much and I'm always moving, I'm always on the move, I'm always in action. And so they have that identity of like, you know, I'm always on the move, so that is constantly playing out. So instead of you know, he wanted to get shoes for his daughter, and instead of waiting to hear a reply back from his daughter, there was this on the move mentality, right? Which is like, okay, let's just go now. Okay, he go gets the shoes, and comes back, we leave the store, and this and that, and then like halfway through, he gets the size of what his daughter is shoe size is, and we end up going back, and I was like laughing the whole way through because it's like, hey, if you just had the ability to just like, you know, just sit, do nothing. Like, there doesn't need to be this thing of, okay, move this, I'm on the move and this. You probably would have saved time by waiting to know what the shoe size is, and then, right?
Because then you're like frustrated, and then you're like, you know, pissed at the, I don't know, the traffic now, and you're going back, you know, it's like it's all this added like build up.
Whereas like really like the most efficient shortcut thing that you can do is a lot of times is just patience and resting.
Well, I mean, we talked about this in the last podcast at the end about the virtues, you know, those 12 virtues. The 13th virtue is enlightenment, and it's the sub virtues are like humility, I think equanimity or eloquence, and
what does that mean? Eloquence, equanimity.
Like just like specifically when it comes to speaking or just like expression, like there's an eloquence in the expression.
Okay.
You know, like the way you speak, it's like graceful. Like it's like almost reminds me of like it has no edges almost. You know, it's like this like beautifully woven tapestry almost, you know, with how you speak and how you conduct yourself. Because you notice that, like, I find over the years, you know, I'll notice like that erratic nature kind of like dissolves in all ways. Like it's like almost like you walk more softly, like you don't like throw shit around, and you're not making noise all the time, you know, like you're, you know, slam doors, you know, like things are much more eloquent in everything you do, more soft, more, it's like you're just quiet, you know, like inside and also outside. But then the other one is patience too, and I find humility, patience in particular, like those are kind of lessons, because it is like the final virtue before like these two other ones, but it's the last virtue because it's like those principles are generally the most difficult to cultivate, like patience, humility, like those are the ones like people generally kind of push away from the most. But it's really what we're like brought back to, like patience is like almost like a daily lesson, you know what I mean? Like, you constantly cycle back to like more patience, more humility, and yeah, with the patience element, because I was thinking, it's like you're bringing an example of like, say, like a normie, you know, like a normie in the world, like going to get like I don't know, shoes from the fucking mall or something, you know. But like in reality, we see these same lessons play out, like even in like advanced stages of the spiritual path, you know, or like if I'm observing, you know, just the social media lands, you know, and you see the same kind of habits happen in people who are, you know, I don't know, to generalize, but say like 100,000 followers, and they're like a coach or something, and then you know, one day they're like great, and the next day they're like crying on like their live or something like this, you know what I mean? Because of something that happened almost exactly like that. Like if you're just a bit more patient than this situation, you know? So it shows you like, it's almost like it doesn't matter like how spiritual, how advanced or whatever you think you are, those same lessons will pop up and like humble you back to like this like final kind of virtue, if you will, you know, enlightenment or whatever, right? But because I mean, it's kind of like a theme that I just it's like a program almost, that impatience or lack of humility, in the sense of, you know, oh, I know this now, you know, I'm good now, I don't need to deal with it, and then like it's like the next moment you're shown like, nope. You know what I mean? So it's funny. it's a funny dynamic.
Yeah, it's like the humility aspect is, I think it comes from experience, one. And then two, it comes from knowing that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I think that's like a secondary definition of humility, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, when you know that you don't know, that's when you know. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you know, wrap your head around that paradox a little bit. It's but it really means just really coming with that empty cup everywhere you go, right? And
just have an open mind.
mhm.
Perfect Instagram use.
Yeah.
Just have an open mind.
You know what I was thinking about when you said that, like the eloquence with speech? I was like, so opposite of Gary Vee. Because there's a recent video of Gary Vee, you know, just chilling, like, you know.
You know what a fucking NFT is? You invested in a fucking NFT? You know it's the future? It's just patience. It's just patience.
Patience. Humility. I ripped both my arms and fucking legs off to be 25 again. It's like, whoa, dude, okay, get it. Genuinely think, like, in the shower, you know, think about the most people I love, and they die, like, whoa.
Yeah, he has, I mean, he's eloquent sometimes, but yeah, it's,
I think, yeah, he definitely has that eloquence for sure, but I think it's like, there's a reason he's so popular, right?
Yeah.
I think on one side, he does have that eloquence and that perspective, really, of, it's almost like, yo, how are you like this erratic with that perspective, right? Like, this is the perspective, like, of a monk in a sense, right? That the humility, the patience, all those kind of things. And then on one hand, I think he knows what grabs attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He knows, like, the business side of things and what grabs attention. And saying these outrageous things is gonna be like, yo, this is gold, and this is gonna pop off.
Yeah, just like spikes the waves of emotion, you know? Like,
yes.
Ride, and
yeah,
people have that kind of, well, the social media world is also very consumptive, so people are kind of going on it to consume. So there is a bit of that, you know, again, that pulling energy. So the more, like, yeah, usually the more energetically charged or emotionally charged a subject is, and the more that weight that pull has, you know.
Yes.
So
yes.
Like, I was talking to my friend on DMs after I had posted about how, like, the post on, you know, you combine COVID and aliens and you get a viral post, and then you talk about, like, self-love and it's like 20 likes or something like that, you know what I mean? And how yeah, it's very much this, like, emotionally charged topic, and then people are just, it's kind of like this, oh, like, you know what I mean, like, what is it, well, you know what I mean, like, kind of feeding that energy. But, you know, as soon as that virality is gone, then it's like people just, like, disappeared. They're on, it's like, on to the next, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where's the next, like, thing to
latch onto? Yeah,
versus, like, actually, like, devoted practice, or, like, taking something and engaging it and you know, really reflecting more deeply, right? But
yeah, there's another side to the conceptive thing with the internet. Is, I'm realizing this now, is people seeking to come home. Yeah. Right? Because if you think about, like, Googling something, right? Well, what is the answer to this? What is this life's question? What is this? A lot of that is also a seeking to come back home, right? So this is where we're like, something like what you do is so profound, because somebody can randomly find you, and then they hear the calmness in your voice, or they hear the eloquence that you have, or whatever, and then they're like, oh, there's a Oh. Yeah, there's that restfulness.
Oh no. I remember that too, you know, like going through, like watching like Muji or like Rupert Spira or like these kind of like non-dualists on
Sure.
YouTube, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, like
Yeah.
you're having like a rough day, or you just like flip some guy off or something, and then you
Yeah.
go watch that. Then you're like, oh, I'm home again.
Yes.
But yeah, I know, I totally see it. I mean, that's the thing with technology. It's like everything has two sides to it, because there's, you know, like people go off about the metaverse. I mean, me too. I mean, I definitely don't want to be living exclusively in a you know. And I do think we're getting a point where we're kind of almost like going too far now. Like, you know what I mean? Like the idea of like just spending hours with like this thing on you, and you're just kind of like in this other world. I find is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, when I look at the amount of time I've spent on the internet in my life, that has also, like, you know, I could say progressed my path,
Right.
due to the people I've connected to, or the knowledge, or
Right.
you know, there's always a balance with everything.
Or even like on a just like a very like mundane thing of like the entertainment. Like for me, like
Where would we have been if I didn't have all this entertainment?
No, in
Damn
the sense. Not in that sense.
Oh.
But in the sense like
Do you know how
fasting.
many comedy shows I watch?
I know all the stand-up comedians. No, in the sense of like I just finished a 3-day water fast, right? And you know, part of the reason that 3-day water fast was relatively easy is because I had like some show to watch to help me through it, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, there's nothing like wrong with that. You know, some people that maybe get into like the self-development thing, they're like never consume entertainment and always just consuming knowledge and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, cool. At the same time, entertainment, when viewed with a different perspective, can be a way to increase your self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, it's just a frequency thing, because I feel like there's phases, you know, like, I mean, I went through a phase probably from like 2011, 2012 to like maybe 2017, where there was pretty much nothing, you know, like TV, movies, you know, obviously music, but like that stuff, there was just so little. Or in music, I wouldn't listen to anything outside of like, you know, like what I was like really focused on wanting to hear. But over the past 3-4 years, like especially the past 2 years, you know, getting back into like watching like full series, like binging on series, or watching stuff, or just seeing, like you're saying, seeing beyond what the picture is.
Yes.
Like I learned a lot of that from my friend Christina, who I mentioned to you about, from the KS community, who's like highly adept, and she's taught me a lot about that, the nature of like being able to read encryption, you know, of, because really like we're just looking for a frequency. Like if you watch like say a Christmas movie that could have no point to it, whatever, it's like some whatever, but there's like a comforting vibe you get, you know, like it's Christmas time, you feel those like, it's like a joyful movie, you know what I mean, maybe funny or whatever. Or for me, it's like, you know, watching the whole Vikings, I had all these past life stuff coming back and realigning with that energy more, you know. There's a frequency behind everything, and if you've gone through your healing within certain dynamics of things, it's like you can go back to watching stuff without it like reprogramming you, or you know, all the things that we think, because you've already realized that light that you are, because if you are the nature of like truth, God, like the absolute, then what can taint that, you know what I mean? Like if you're watching someone get stabbed or something, it's not like something you'd maybe want to be engaging in that much, or it's not always pleasant, but like what is it going to do to this like insurmountable light, eternal light that you are, you know? Like you're I think people have to, not people, but just it's important to come back to the reality of like who you actually are and how vast you are, how powerful you really are, you know, so that you can just look at things for what they are. You're not like
Right.
this is Illuminati, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see a triangle or some shit, I don't know. It's just, because you're gonna see it. Like, truth is synonymous with awareness. So if you're aware of something, it really can't have the same power it's had over you.
Right.
You know, if you're watching movies asleep and all this programming's happening and you're taking it in and, you know, you're going, you know, that kind of thing, right? So I feel like, yeah, I think there's a limit with it. Like, sometimes if there's scenes like rape scenes or something, like, I'm not so down. I'll just scroll through, or I'm not watching like horror movies or stuff that's like really over the edge.
Yeah.
But again, it's coming back to like, it's not really about any genre or any type of music or whatever. It's like the encryption that's behind it. That's what I think is most important.
Meaning the frequency, the vibe that it's giving off.
That or even potentially something even beyond that, like your relationship or contract with that music. Like, Christina once has sent me like some pretty dark stuff here and there, where she's like, oh yeah, like I re-encrypted this song, and it's like a Marilyn Manson song or something like that.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And she's like, oh, I re-encrypted it, so it released the imprints of the satanic, devilish vibe.
Oh,
so when you listen to it, it actually is gonna support in certain healing or things like this.
Wow.
You know, as an example.
Yeah.
So in her case, or I've started to find that relationship too, where it's like, what would it mean to listen to something and you're actually contributing in the realignment of that, or watching something and you're actually contributing to the realignment of that.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Because in truth, like even say right now in this world scenario we're in, the only thing that's really going to align to like a higher timeline is our perception. Like, we're all perceiving the same collective world, but it's our individual perception that's actually navigating timelines. You know, like say we're navigating a more positive timeline.
Right.
Like, someone who's going to go down the other side is going to be viewing it at a different angle.
Yes.
Than me, let's say.
Right.
Or you, or whoever, you know.
Yeah.
So by us actually observing what is so-called negative or not positive or whatever, we're realigning that, we're healing that just based on observing it.
Right.
You know. So just watching a show or a movie or listening to a song that maybe has like a malintention, there could be an aspect of your path with that song, you know, just by stumbling upon it, or, you know, not to make anything out of this, but that could contribute in the actual healing of that,
of like maybe
song,
the healing of the collective or the song or what it means.
Yeah.
It goes back to one thing that I've like said recently to a meditation class that I've said, is that it's not really like what happens to you, but how you internalize it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was like one of my biggest like aha moment on this journey. Is I remember once walking downtown once with a girlfriend, and these two guys look at me, right? And my programming, being an Arab, raised in the Middle East, all that, was these guys want to fight, right? And as soon as I had that thought, she said, oh, that's cute. And so I snapped out of it, and I was like, what? She was like, those two gay guys are checking you out. And I was just like, whoa, like, here I am, like, you know, ready in defense mode, thinking something's about to go down. And what in reality happened was completely different, right? So
it's like, welcome to the West.
Yeah. We got gay guys here. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah. Perception, really, huh? Like, it's so cliche to say in a sense, right? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That I don't think I said that Wayne Dyer or something. But it's also true within, on the note of like everything is the self, right? Because if you take that sort of extreme ownership of everything is the self, then nothing really has power over you, right? And you know, for example, for myself, like as we talked about in the last podcast with the father wound, right? when I healed that father wound, all of a sudden, like, the things and the dynamics between my father and I were so different. And I was just like, whoa, like, what happened? He's not acting the same way, nothing, like, so many things changed. And it really made me realize that, like, you know what, everything is the self, right? And how you internalize, how you perceive everything, that's everything. So
yeah, it is. I mean, and it goes to that, like, I'm reminded of that muscle spasm analogy I've been using recently, where, like, a muscle spasm, like, when it happens, like, it's like involuntary,
right,
where, like, it just arises and there's nothing really you can even do during it. Like, you can't hold, like, if you hold it, it's not going to change it, like, so it really just kind of, like, peaks out, and then it goes away, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's how I see, well, it's I guess the ongoing, like, perceptual, I guess, desire, I guess you could say, or something, but like, to see everything as the divine perfection, or as God, or as the manifestation of the self, is pretty much that, where you see everything as this, like, almost spontaneous, involuntary response that's arising, where yeah, truly, it's just you're along the ride of this eternal path or unfolding, that everything is happening for your better good anyways. So everything is healing. Everything that arises is happening as a healing. Like, when like we were talking about, like, you get sick, you're really just detoxing, and but everything that arises as any particular that holds any weight is essentially just it's like it's on its way out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the processing, integration, perception, like, all those ideas kind of even dissolve in that space, because you're just everything that's arising, and everything between one arising from another is also all the self, like, it's like,
wow, okay,
you see,
yeah.
It's the other example is kind of like the spaciousness that's inside you, that's in between the skin, and that's outside of you, is all the same spaciousness.
Wow, yeah.
Right? Like,
the space in between the space is all you.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, you're technically translucent. Everything is translucent. Nothing holds actually true solidity. So when you see everything as this naturally arising spontaneity, it's kind of experienced in that way, like, everything is empty, essentially,
right.
Like, it's this it's translucent, it's spacious, it's not as solid as we've made it out to be. So it's interconnected with that same, like, web, and that's how we can, like, kind of, like, collapse and create realities,
right.
because it's just energy, like, popping up as one thing, and then it collapses, and now it's this other thing.
Okay.
But it's really that same self, just manifesting in innumerable forms or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you're really just along for the ride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, whatever you are,
Yeah.
Because you're if you are all of that, then everything is just like, essentially aware of itself. There's no, like, awareness or one to process or to integrate. It kind of just feels that way. But then the moment you, like, sink back into that, like, inner peace, inner silence, or inner, like, restfulness, then it doesn't seem that way anymore.
Right. It's not that integration. You don't integrate. It's that integration happens.
Yeah.
Right. That's the difference from, like, what I'm gathering. Is that it's that all these things that are happening are just happening. It's not you doing them.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. There could be a sense, or there is a sense of, like, I guess, the individualized focus or intention, or what's perceived as that. But you could also say, well, that's also the self as well. Like, arising in that moment to focus on a particular thing.
Right.
Was it you who's really, and people get too much in. I mean, you see people for the whole life battling or debating that mind idea.
Yeah.
But experientially, it's actually so clear when you come to know it, right? Because you're like, it's more fun, more enjoyable, more effortless to not take ownership over the idea that you're like directing the ship, and
Yeah.
because if you're directing the ship, then everything has more weight. Like every decision has more weight.
Yes.
It's more important.
Yes.
You think you're more important.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
it's just a funny, because I often reflect, like, in a lot of things, but I think I was reflecting on just the idea of needing to be somewhere like more spiritual than, I don't know, Ottawa or something. You know what I mean? Like that typical idea, like go to Costa Rica, or which I feel a lot of people think about.
Yeah.
But then I'm often reminded of the great sages who like realize the true nature, or become like a rainbow body monk in the middle of like a busy city, or in some shit ass town.
And sometimes they go to the areas that are not doing well, or whatever, to bless it, right? Because they say the power of just like one enlightened, awakened being has such a like ripple effect around the community.
Just being there, like not even. I remember, I think there was a story of I think it was in Autobiography of a Yogi, where he would tell, the book was cool, or what I enjoyed from the book was he shared a lot of stories about like great masters and sages who would like do like pretty like miracle type shit. And one of the things he would talk about was I don't know if it was Sri Tushwara or another master who would like biolocate his body, or he would just like appear in like slums, or he would appear as like this like crippled monk, or like old person like walking down the street or something, and then like the Yogananda would like run into him, or someone would run into him, and then he would bless them, and they'd have like this experience, and he's like this like, and then you just like disappear, or like the stuff that you would think are like the complete opposite of what people, when people are trying to be spiritual.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like looking more spiritual, with all the stuff or whatever, and like not as a natural emanation or as a natural guidance, but just as a process of like the mind like trying to like present itself as
spiritual.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or as religious, or this, and so I found that really, really funny, and it's also reminding me right now of and this is something I've been working on more, like in developing my connection to like higher aspects of self, or like obviously in the studies of Kalonics, like connections to guardians or higher council beings, who have communication with certain people on the planet, or have had that. It reminds me of a story of this guru. I think it was Shiva Bali Yogi. He wasn't that well known, but he was a really potent yogic master who, I think he spent 12 years meditating. He spent 8 years meditating 23 hours a day, and then 4 years meditating 12 hours a day. And he was in like constant communion with Shiva, he said, where he was basically like only taking directions from what he viewed to be his guru, which was Shiva. So he would only do anything he would do would only be from a direct like communication or guidance from this higher essence. And part of that guidance was, he thought, to meditate 23 hours a day for whatever. And by the end of it, like the story was, he would be sitting in meditation in like these slums, and he would get like hit by like people would come with like sticks and like hit him, or like he would have wounds, and like bugs would come in the wounds, start eating away at his skin, and he still like stuck out this meditation. And at the end of the 12 years, the story was that he apparently had like a direct visitation by Shiva, or by this guru essence, and like he received this healing, and all his wounds just like disappeared. And like his spine, everything just like realigned, and but the only thing that stuck was like his hands, where like he had his hands like in meditation prayer, and his hands like forever stuck like this, because of like they were just so like infused from so much meditation. But I told the whole story, but the main part of the story was that element of that guidance, right, where like that's one thing I've respected in those traditions of the guru essence, which is kind of like the only actions you're taking in your life are coming from like a direct cognition of like guidance that is like absolutely necessary, like coming back to the idea of like doing a bunch of unnecessary stuff. A lot of that is, I guess you could translate that to like not acting out of like a true inner guidance, of like this is like necessary in your experience to like act upon, versus
Right.
all the things that we may think we need to do in a day, or
Yeah.
you know, that really like, no, you should be kind of like in practice or in meditation or in some sort of devotion, or you know, other something else. I don't know. But I don't know how I got on this, but it was basically on this idea. I guess it comes back to the idea of like, if we're acting in alignment with like a true connection to source, or you know, these higher aspects of self,
Yeah.
then everything we're doing is like a part of that flow. You know what I mean? Like that could be the closest thing you could say is like the individual, like decision maker or actor.
Okay.
Is like, it's the reason why it feels like that, but it's really still coming from a place of a higher nature, a higher guidance, you know, like the higher self or the guides or whatever that are basically telling you what to do. And it may not be a voice, you know,
Yes.
but it's like a direct cognition of like, you know, this is what it is,
Right.
you know. And I find, you know, like the idea, like say like the traveling or doing this or that, most of the time, if that's coming up and there's a lot of chatter or this like mind, you know, oh, is it this way? It's like, it's not that, it's not it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, a lot of traveling is to escape that.
It's
Right.
true, yeah.
A lot of the common traveling is escaping the responsibilities, and so you associate that with the calmness of the mind. So you go somewhere where you haven't been before, so you get a shot of presence because of that novelty, right? And that novelty makes you feel like, oh, I'm looking at something new, so you're so present with it, right? And you're like, oh, what's this detail here, right? Whereas, you know, Ottawa, for example, is a very like touristic city, for example, yet so many people that live in it don't look at the common like touristic things, because they're like, I know that.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like a relationship that you have, someone you know, or like a mundane task you do every day. Or,
right.
Yeah, it's like all the things. Yeah, it's totally it.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I used to be, you know, this thing with like personal development and routines and doing this and that and stacking this after the other and blah blah blah. And now it's not like I don't do those things anymore, but I appreciate the space between them. Right. Like got my routine of like waking up, doing my thing, going to the gym, and that space between here and the gym is it's sort of what I'm really like looking for in a sense. Like, I don't know what to say. It's really what I enjoy the most, more than this sense of accomplishment that I did this routine and I served this many people and I did this much work and I worked on this, that. That space where I'm like enjoying the sunshine, or I'm feeling the ground on my feet, that space is where it's at.
Yeah, it's where it's at.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like how the TMG, how they like sometimes zoom in on their face, you know?
Oh yeah.
We gotta do that for hours with it. Like when you did that sound before, like
yeah, zoom in on the sound on my face. Yeah.
Add the words.
Yeah. Oh.
They do that really good. I would want to do that. Yeah.
The effects they sometimes put, like insane.
Yeah.
You know, they're so good with the graphics. Yeah, I like them because they've got this vibe of like, in a sense of like, oh, they're manifesting things effortlessly, or it looks effortlessly in a sense, right? Where instead of like, you know, the Gary Vee thing of like grind and no days off and no vacation, none. Instead of that, they're just like chilling, drinking beer, blah blah, and just doing it like an everyday normal thing.
Yeah. it's funny because their business is actually quite big.
Really?
Like all the stuff they do. Firstly, well, they did this. Their podcast, they got on Patreon really early when it first launched or something. So I think they make something crazy, like, 20-30K a month just on Patreon.
Wow.
Because they do these, but then they do a bonus episode, and then that has like bonus material, so people go on and things like that, and then they also do their stand-up comedy. So they have like packed out shows or whatever. Then they also have like they each I think have like clothing brands or merch brands or something like this. And then they each have their own platforms where they're both like pretty big. Like Cody I think has like 3 or 5 million followers, something like that.
Wow. Cody's the long hair dude?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they've also done music too. They have like they do rap, and it's kind of like funny, but like it's pretty good too.
Wow.
And they had like full on video stuff that they've done.
Yeah.
And so it's quite an operation, it seems,
Yeah,
but
they got quite a bit going on.
Yeah, but I mean it's the same as a lot of these YouTube gamers, who are freaking like 5 million followers and they just play video games all day and they stream it and just like some of them are hilarious, but I don't know, it's just a funny. It just shows you can, as long as you just follow your own path and what you feel is most joyful, like you can make a living, or just you can go down that path and be sustained as easily as anything else, or half the time more effortlessly than working some grind job.
Yeah.
But it's just that it's more so the movement through belief structures, because you could say like the initial layers of entrepreneurship are often like a new spiritual path.
Yeah.
For the Western mind.
Right.
Because entrepreneurship forces one to like be self-sovereign, be responsible, have discipline and focus, and we're not reliant on all these things. Like you have to really fend essentially for yourself.
Yes.
But it's more so like you're moving through all these belief structures that kept you in that cog in a wheel lifestyle.
Right.
The prison,
Yeah.
And you're essentially breaking out of prison. That's you know what I mean? Like that's really what that whole matrix world is.
Yes.
And I find often like not only spirituality, but entrepreneurship is a doorway out of the matrix, quote unquote matrix, for a lot of people. It can keep people very wrapped up in it, but I find if there's like a true devotional like entrepreneurship, I find you're more like an artist than you are like a
business. Capitalizing.
Yeah, like some manager or CEO.
Yes.
You're more of an artist and a true creator.
Right.
And that always navigates you at like the path less traveled, where you have no real path you're walking. It's your own path, and every step is
your own uniqueness, your own
So you're always going to be taken care of in that regard, because it's just a frequency thing. So that's the old ways like of a monk or a yogi are not much different than the Western world of like the athlete or the entrepreneur artist. That's how I see it. It's more of the tantric lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah.
In the world, but it often leads to very similar realizations.
Right. Okay. Maybe that's why Gary Vee's gotten.
That's what came to mind. Yeah.
Okay.
Where like it looks like he's kind of gone through or is going through awakenings, and a lot of these other entrepreneurs, the lessons, or athletes, musicians, all of them have, like I was watching a Prince video the other day. Oh, you were there?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, that was a good example of like, same thing, It's just less, I mean, you could even say it's the same, I wouldn't say it's the same ratio, because in my view, Buddhism will have the highest ratio of enlightened ones.
Well, because that's the objective.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's also like everything about it holds that like almost not purity, because there's aspects of the Buddhist path that are distorted too, but it's like the entirety of that focus is like it's held its original intention, if you will. Right. And like the farther it's gone over to the West, it's lost maybe that intention, but you can never really leave that intention. You know what I mean? Like you could say like everyone's goal on the planet is to be enlightened.
Yes.
It's just like maybe majority just don't know that,
right?
Or they're completely misguided, or and all the other history aspects of the planet obviously coming into that too. but it's like it's still all everything we do is always for enlightenment. You know what I mean? It's like everything we've always done has always been for that. It's just that some are more coded for quicker enlightenment or
Sure.
based on their karma or whatever. But I've often seen that, you know, with like athletes, you know, getting in flow state, stuff like that, or musicians, you know, like Michael Jackson. Like you have to have been in a true like higher consciousness state to be able to accomplish these things.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Even if you were part of mind control programs or whatever, it's still you're tapping into something.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. You're definitely tapping into something like special. You know, when you tap into that like state, it's you. I feel like it's so much easier in a sense for athletes to or artists to awaken because they've tasted small like bursts of it, right?
And the discipline foundation is there too.
I think that's it. I think I was saying something recently like you can't know flow if you don't know structure. Right. And I really believe that, right? There is this like new agey thing of like, you know, oh, just be in flow all the time and I just like to go with the flow with all the day and blah blah, and it's like, and also this thing with like intuitive eating that's like become popular as well, and in a sense like they're bypassing to make their life easier, and it doesn't really work that way. You know, like you can't know your intuition if you haven't devoted to something to awaken it.
Yeah, or it's like you're in a damaged body and then you're just listening to parasites or something.
Right. Which is like I've heard before. It's like, oh, I thought it was intuitive eating and I was eating all this bread and blah blah blah. It turns out like, oh, I've got like candida in my stomach. And I was like, well, there you go. And that's why like in real intuitive eating is first done through practicing that structure. But not only because there's a lot of that structure in terms of nutrition, but a lot of people have that structure sort of in this Cartesian kind of way, where it's just like so much mind, right? And like counting calories and doing this and doing that. It's more so the structure simultaneously with tuning in, right? Where like, all right, I'm gonna follow this structure and see how that feels and see what the biofeedback loop is, right? And then through tuning in to that biofeedback loop and committing to that structure, that's how you really awaken your intuition and can then do perhaps something like intuitive eating.
Yeah, I agree completely. That discipline has to be there. Yeah, it has to be there. And focus, discipline, focus, perseverance, they're all synonymous. Kind of relates back to that element of the masculine, the healing the masculine components, you know?
Right.
Because those are the tendencies of that side of the masculine element. You know?
See, that's the illusion of the spiritual path, right? Is because somebody can hear the peace in someone's voice, and they go like, I don't know, their mind associates that like no responsibilities and this and that, and they're going with the flow, and that's why they're so peaceful. And it's the total opposite of that. It's that devotion, right? It's that really true devotion to whatever it is that you do, right? Whether it be a spiritual path or your art or your loved one, whatever it is, the spirituality and the peace emerges out of that discipline naturally, right? Like when I think about, you know, one athlete that I looked up to growing up was Kobe Bryant, right? And one thing that I never noticed was I was like, yo, the guy sounds like so peaceful, right? And I said like, oh, it's just his devotion and his discipline, right? And I think it's a similar thing to Prince, right? There's such a devotion to the art, right? You hear of stories of Prince, by the way, with like Dave Chappelle, on how like he had this aura, right? And almost like everything he did had that effortless aura, right? Where he would be like, all right, like I'm at Charlie Murphy's house, I'm gonna play basketball, whatever, and okay, let's go play basketball, and everybody changed into like athletic gear except Prince. Like he was still wearing heels and the blouse and whatever, you know, dressed in like Prince fashion, you know, with the long sleeves and everything. And he murked everybody, like
high heels.
Yeah. Just crossover, dribble, like dunk and layups, everything.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and now that I think about it, probably a part of that is his devotion to probably everything that he does.
Yeah, that's it. It's, I guess, I mean, really, if people were just to focus on that, life would be far more, effortless. Because it's
quite the paradox, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, because it requires like the utmost like focus and devotion.
Right.
It's just that.
Yeah. That's another zoom in moment.
It's too much.